Now we'll start with the straps, because the straps I've done the measurements a little bit different as well, because I'm using cork and I've wanted to take advantage of like just doing one strip the whole width. So I've ended up with two straps that are 27 3/4 inches wide, and I've made the height there at 3.5 inches high, and I've made a mark down the center, and I've already added my double-sided tape, so I'm ready for when it comes to folding those and getting those ready. So what I did there is I cut the full width of the roll of the cork material, and then I just removed the selvage edges from the cork, and that's the length then, or the width that I was left with. So, and I find that that still makes a really nice handle. Now for strap connectors, instead of cutting 4 separate pieces, I've just cut one long piece, and I've cut it at 24 inches wide by 1 3/4 inches high, and then this I'll be folding over to the center, and then I'll stitch it down, and then I'll be cutting it into 4 strap connector pieces after I've done that. Saves doing 4 individual strap connectors. I've got my side panels out of cork as well, and with these ones I haven't added any interfacing at all, because I want the sides to be able to fold in quite easily and that there. So I've made pattern notches, and then I've just made notches, but I've put little marks on there where my notches are so you can see them. So I've got 2 side panels. I've got my base, so for the exterior bottom of the bag, so my bag's going to be a 2-tone, so I'm doing 2-tone bag. So for the base, I've marked out the measurements that were in the pattern there, or there's actually pattern pieces for it, and the pattern calls for a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but using cork or vinyl and things like that, the 1/4 inch I found just wasn't sort of enough. So to make this bag, I'm going to be using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. But then to add in the Decaville, I've added in here, I've got 2 layers of Decaville. I'm not sure if you can see that, so I've adhered the 2 layers to give that base a little bit more structure. And then I've kept that, it's a 1/2 inch away from the cut edge of the base of the pattern, of the bottom panel, so that allows for the turn of the cloth when I go and sew that, and then I fold these up. It gives a nice finish there as well. I'm also going to do some top stitching around before I attach the purse feet, so I've marked in the measurements for the purse feet, 1 in the center and then 1 at each edge there as well. Right. For the flap, I did make some changes to the flap, and I've got them here so that I can show you. So when you get the pattern piece for the flap, the original sizing for the flap is out here, but what I've already done on this side is I've trimmed off, just tapering from this curve here, and I've trimmed off 1/4 inch off from here. So start here at 1/4 inch, and then I've tapered down to here, and then I've trimmed that off. So that's what I've done on that side, and I still need to do it here on this side. And then what I'm also doing, so this is going to be my exterior flap, this will be my lining. I haven't added any stabilizer or anything to that, because I'm also going to add in, I'm not going to do a contrasting strip, a decorative strip on the front of the bag. It's just sort of a subtle strip, but I will be top stitching this down, and then I'll also be adding some rivets to make a little bit more of a decorative feature on the front of the bag. So it's just a nice subtle little decorative feature. So I need to go ahead and trim these back, that side that I haven't trimmed yet. So just lining these back up, these panels. I'll do it now while we're here. These all nicely lined up. So before I trim, put these right sides together. So I want to make sure I had done this side here. So I've already trimmed both of those on that side, and I need to trim both of these on this side. So lining those up there like that. I can just hold them like my other one I did on the cutting table, and I used my rotary cutter. But if I just hold these together, keeping that there, and then I can just follow that line there and cut that out. So that's all that I took off from there. And then another tip I thought I'd share with you, if you have a bit of a hard time sewing around curves, what you can do is you can get your ruler. I'll grab one here to show you, and you can mark your stitching line. So for the flap, I'm keeping the stitching line still at 1/4 inch because it's just for the flap. I don't need a big seam allowance or anything on there. So what you do, grab a ruler, you've got your 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch or whatever the seam allowance is, put your marking along there, and just get a pen and just go along and follow the long straight edges are easy. As you get to corners, I usually like to use one of these lines, and then it has a mark here. I'll use this one. Then I can sort of start marking the curve. You can either move your piece or move your ruler and just keep marking around. You can see by doing this, I'm even still lining up exactly where my previous ones are. An inside curve, I'll show you. Look, I've still got this little mark here, and I'm going to mark exactly there. Here, I'll go into this little gap here where I haven't got a little mark. 1/4 inch, make a mark. 1/4 inch, make a mark. You don't have to have full connecting pieces like here. You'll probably see I've just done a little mark, a little mark, a little mark. And so then for that corner, I've done a line here and a line there, and then I'll just sort of smooth that little corner around if it's not already smooth. That was just a little tip that I thought I'd share. I've already added some Decorative for my inside piece of my flap, and I've marked the marking where I'm going to be putting the magnetic snap. So adding that bit of Decorative there just gives that a little bit of more structure there, so it can't come out. And so that's those ones. I'll just put my scissors away. So we've got that piece. Then I've got my front and back piece. So this will be my back panel. I've already attached my logo there. I've just got plastic on there so that it doesn't get scratched. So I've got new logos. So they've come out quite nice. I don't have a matte black logo, but I do have a gunmetal. So I'm just going to use my gunmetal black on there. Now on the wrong side here, what I've done is I've marked out a 1/2 inch seam allowance, I've placed marks at a 1/2 inch because I wanted to place my Decorative, this is Decorative Light, a little bit away from where I'm going to be stitching. So I will be stitching these at the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, but I wanted my Decorative in a little bit further, so I just placed little guides before I pressed that into place. And then I've backed my logo there. I've got a really light, like a smaller piece of Decorative Light. I've adhered that down, and then I've adhered down a bigger piece. I can add in some, like if you didn't want to do that, you can add in like some duct tape. This is cotton, like cloth tape, so it's like a duct tape, but it's got more strength to it. So you can add a piece of that over the top, And I like to just make sure it lays nice and smooth and there's no puckers or anything like that. That also then just gives that a little bit more structure. Not more structure, but more security and stability there, so things won't fall off. When you do apply these, make sure it's really nicely adhered. So down nice and secure and strong. So that's my back panel, and I've placed the markings that were on the pattern piece. So little notches there, and I've got the centers already marked. There's my center at the bottom, there's already marked. Just keeps everything really consistent and nicely lined up. This is my front piece, and I've already placed a mark on the front where my opposite side of my magnetic snap closure is going to go. And again there, and I also usually make little notes as well so that I know what's my front, what's my back. And I've got all my pattern notches, and then I've marked them with some friction pen just so you could see them as well. Again there, use the same piece that I'd created there, and I've kept the Decaville 1/2 inch away, even though I'm going to be stitching at 3/8 of an inch. So that's my exterior pieces, and then for the lining pieces, I'm using this gorgeous batik fabric. So it's beautiful, I really like that. For the interfacing, I'm using Easy Fuse, which I also got from ChrisW Designs, and just gives that a nice little bit of structure. Not too stiff, just really nice. Now I've gone ahead as well, because we've got some pretty sharp sort of curves here. I've gone through as well, and I've marked that stitching line there, and that's at 3/8 of an inch, and I've marked my pattern notches as well. So that's for the lining side panels, and then we've got the lining pocket panels. These are the pocket panels that were on the exterior of the pattern, and I'm putting them on the interior in the lining. And what I've done for a bit of fun, I'll show you first. I've marked the pattern notches, so everything's already marked on everything, so I can line everything up perfectly. And what I'm doing is, this will be the outside of the pocket, and this piece here will be on the lining side. So when you get a batik fabric, you can use either side. So this is the side that had the nice silver there, and I thought I'll do a little bit of a contrast, so that will be the inside of the pocket. So I've got 2 pockets there ready to go, my 2 side lining pieces. Then this is for the inside bottom panel of the lining, and I've applied a layer of the Easy Fuse interfacing, and then I've also put a layer of Decaville Light just to give that bottom lining panel there just a little bit more structure in the bag. Just find that helps the lining sit nice as well. Now for the front side of the lining panel, that's the piece there, I've used Easy Fuse again there from ChrisW Designs, and I've marked my 3/8 of an inch seam allowance there. I've centers, all my little notches, all the little markings that were on the pattern I've already done. Now this is where I'm doing something different as well. So for the pocket on this side, I'm doing the slip pocket, same sort of format as what's in the pattern, but I've just changed it up a little. Now to keep the bulk out of the bottom of the lining, what I've done is I've made a mark 3/8 of an inch away from the bottom. This is where the bottom section of my pocket, when I go to apply this, I can just line those up there, and this gives me my 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then there's plenty of room there. What I've done for this panel, I've cut it, it's 5 inches high, but I've folded it in half. Now what I did, I've made some little marks here so that I can share some tips with you as well. I've interfaced this again there with the Easy Fuse over the whole pattern piece, gives the pocket a nice little bit more structure. If you wanted to keep the bulk out of the side seams of your lining, so if you've got a domestic machine and your machine struggles at times and your aim is to reduce some of that bulk, what you can do is, I'll start from the beginning here. I used this panel to create this pocket, and what I did was on the pattern piece I worked out where I wanted that pocket to sit, and then on the pattern piece I then just made the mark down from the top where I wanted that one to be. On this pattern, that little mark is 1 3/4 inches down from the top cut edge. I made a little mark, and then on the pattern piece I just got the pattern piece, take that away, on the pattern piece, so we'll assume this is the pattern piece, I just then folded it down, and that created then the top section of my pattern. Worked out where I wanted the pocket to sit and start from the bottom, and then I used that same pattern piece and I folded that up, and that created my pattern. Hope that makes sense. If you need me to clarify that, just let me know. So I then cut that on the fold there. Now if you want to reduce the bulk, what you can do is exactly what I've done there, but measure in 1 inch, because what you can do is you can trim off like a 1/2 inch there, because we don't need a 1 inch seam allowance, but you can fold this right sides together. You can leave the 1 inch there and then we can trim it down later. Fold that right sides together, stitch from the top edge, line up these 2 raw edges here and stitch down to the bottom, lock your stitches at the beginning and the end, and then you've got a seam. You can then trim that seam allowance down to 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch. You don't need a big seam allowance there, 1/4 inch is probably fine, so trim that off. Repeat and do the same for this side again there, starting at the top, stitch down to the bottom, lock your stitches and that. Then what you can do is you can then just turn it right side out, and you would have a pocket that would be about 2 inches smaller, let's say, and then it would sit, you could place it in the same position, but you would just center it and it would be out of your seam allowances, so that would reduce bulk. Now for this pocket, why I've got the cut edges up the top is I'm using some cork, and I've cut this cork here 1 inch high, and I've just cut it out. The piece I had was 13 inches wide, and then I will be applying that to the top of that pocket, and it gives it a little bit of a decorative element, and it'll be folded over, and that will encase that raw edge. And then I'll be adding some little rivets where I do the dividing sections on the pocket. So that's that piece. So that's for the front, so we'll go through and you'll be able to watch me do that piece. Then for the back panel, what I've done is I've just adhered my label here, and then I will stitch that down to secure that one, but it's already centered there. Got my center markings again, everything's all marked, ready to go. Seam allowances, notches, center marks, everything's there's done. Now this is another section where I'm doing it different. This has a smaller zipper pocket, and the technique is completely different. So for this one I'm doing a pocket that will have a facing. So for my facing piece for the pocket, I'm making a lovely big pocket. I've cut this piece here, and I've used a non-woven interfacing, so just a lightweight non-woven interfacing. Won't have any stretch in there, and it's nice and thin, so there's no bulk on that. Then marked my center line because that will help me when it comes time to lining that up. I've cut it 11 inches wide, so from raw edge to raw edge, and 2 3/8 of an inch high. Why I do the 2 3/8 is I can then just get my ruler, grab a ruler here, and it makes it easy for marking out my zipper opening. Just get my ruler, line up that raw edge there on that 1-inch mark, just draw a line, and I can just go straight across from there. My interfacing's in sort of side there, so I just follow the cut edge of the fabric, 1-inch line, turn this around and just do another 1-inch line, and then I've got a 3/8 of an inch opening, and then I just make another mark with the ruler and I come in 1 inch. So if you just do 1 inch, 1 inch all the way around, you've created then this little box. Now if you like, what you can do so that you remember when you stitch down, because we'll be just stitching around this little box, and what we're going to do when it comes time to cutting, we're going to cut a slit through the center, and then we're going to be cutting to these corners here. I don't tend to mark the corners, but because I've done so many, I don't sort of worry about it. I just sort of know where I'm cutting, but that can be quite helpful. So just make a mark. So you could do, I recommend probably about 3/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch, at least 1/2 an inch you would want to do. So that would be a 1/2 an inch there. So 1/2 an inch is probably suffice. And when you cut, you're going to be cutting right to those corners there. So, and you'll be cutting right through the center. Just so you know, that's sort of where you'll be cutting. It doesn't have to be directly exactly in the center, but around that center there, because we'll be cutting this open, making a little window. So then for my pocket pieces, I've got my 2 pocket pieces here. So I've used SF101 for these pieces because I don't like my pocket panels inside to be too thick and bulky for when it comes time to closing and folding the bottom edges and things like that. So I find just some SF101 or just a really light interfacing is more than suffice for that. And that's all for that one. I think we have covered that bit. Oh, and then I've got my zipper. Got the most important thing, a zipper, and I've cut my zipper a little bit wider than this. So these pockets here, they're also cut at that. I probably should give you those measurements. They're cut at the 11 inches so that they line up with the pocket facing. And then for the height of these, I cut them at 6.5 inches height, and then we can trim those down later once we've applied them. So that's those, and the zipper. Love this zipper. This zipper, I also got this zipper tape as well from ChrisW Designs. So when I was putting the order in and I knew what materials I was using, I thought that would be a nice little contrast. So I just thought that would look nice, and that's in that nice matte sort of black there as well. So that's that. We've done our front, we've done our base and our linings. And the thread that I'm using for the exterior is, I will just grab it here, 1 second. I'm using, just unroll this a little bit so you can see. I'm using Coats de Bond, and it's a tex weight of 80. So that's it there. So that's what I'm using for the exterior of the bag. And then for the interior of the bag, I had this coordinating thread, and it's a Gutermann thread. So I don't sew much of my lining on this walking foot machine. The machine I'm using is a fully automatic Voltex walking machine, and the type of machine it is it is a VT, which is Voltex, and it's a 0330 T-D4. So that's the machine, and that's the colour that I'm choosing. So that's the thread that I got. It's the Gutermann, and it's 100% polyester thread. So in this section, what we're going to do first up is I'm going to apply the magnetic snap closure to the flap and to the front panel. So I've got my pieces here, I've got my magnetic snap and my little backings. I've already placed my marks here and here on those so that they will line up, and everything should line up there perfectly. So I've used the pattern piece to mark those. Now what I need to do first is, where I've made my mark, I've used the little backing, and then I've placed the little dot in the center, and then I've made two little marks on the inside here, and then just using, I've got this little sort of tool here, little scalpel, and then I'll just go through and I've made little marks through there, and they come through to that side. So I don't need to add any more structure to the back of this. It's already got the Decoville. I could, if I like, add another piece there, but I think I've got sufficient there. Now what I'll do is on this piece, because this is the front, when you get a magnetic snap, you'll see one piece usually has a decorative little print on it. Not sure if you can see that. I'll just move it around and the light will probably capture it. And one side usually has writing on it. I'll see if you can see that. I like to put the little decorative print, whereas if the purse is open, what I see is that nice decorative print. So I'm just putting those in there, and I think that looks nice. So on the back, I've got another piece of Decoville light, and I've used the backing again there, and I've made little marks for where I want to put that over to add a little bit of extra security there, and I just make some little slits there. I like to just put that over the top. You can add some adhesive there if you like. Then I'll put the backing on, that on, and then you can fold those down. Some of these are really tough. If you get ones that are hard to push down, you can sort of use the back of a ruler or something like that to help you. Now, so push this down nice and firm, then fold that down and push it right down so it sort of is really well secured in there. I'll just show you a look. So it's got less chance of that magnetic snap coming out. The extra layer of Decoville protects the front of the cork or vinyl or leather or whatever it is that you're using. So again there, I'm just using that tool, and I've sort of started that and fold it right over. Get that really nice and secure. So you can see it's nice and flat. Some people like to fold those little prongs to the center. I just find that it builds up a little bit too much bulk in the middle, whereas if I sort of put that on, you can see there's no bulk there. It's nice and secure. Now for a little bit of extra security, what you can do, this is one of my favorite glues, it's called Eileen's Turbo Tacky Glue. It doesn't run or anything like that. I can then put a little bit of adhesive around those little prongs there, just for another little layer of protection. Just a little bit there, I've probably put too much. And then I can add in another piece of Decoville if I like. Now, because I've already got a square piece here, I usually like to offset that piece of square and just do a sort of just cut it out roughly, just so I don't have a build up of like thickness in one place. Just place that on there and it will dry. From this side, give that a nice press, get that all nice and flat. that'll stay nice and secure. Then I can add on, so nothing will move. Going there, this is that general purpose cloth tape. It adheres really well. Place that on. Some little scissors. I like to make sure it's really nice and secure in there. And that's held down really nicely. It's got the adhesive, it's got the tape, it's sort of just got really a nice lot of extra protection. And I can't feel any of that from this side. There's no bulk there. It's just sitting nice. You can see there. That looks good. So that's that one done. Now we'll do the flap. So we might as well do that all at the same time while we're going. So the mark, I've got the mark there. I need to get that little washer, place that on, and I'll make my little cut marks. So I've just done that. So there I've got my little cutting marks. I've already got my Decorative on the back. I could have just cut from the back already as well. So I just want to show you as well how to do your little markings. You can go from the back. Just poke those through. Don't sort of do too big a hole, but you want it big enough that the little prongs will go through. Come through from the front. Here we go. Oh, they lined up spot on. Must have done something pretty good there, hey? Doesn't take much to amuse me. So that's on. Okay, now I'll get another little piece of Decorative. Just keep all your likes. I'll just keep like any off-cut scraps, and then I can just have a little section here in my drawers, and I can cut pieces off to do things like this. If I want to make a little mark again, I can use that washer. Doesn't have to be dead center or anything there. On this flap, I think just doing that extra layer might be nice. Don't know if it needs that. Not sure. Making sure I can't, but yeah, I'll put that on because it is the flap. Put this one on. And I'm just going to do a little piece. I'm going to make sure this one's really nice and strong. Actually, nah, change mine. I'll put that one on there. Then I'm going to put, do I want to? No, I'll put got the washer on. Yep, put that on. Then I'll do this. Change things up however you like. I'm going to go right over. Just don't want these little prongs to be felt in the flap. I think a little bit of extra doesn't hurt. I'm just bending those around there like I did before. It's nice and secure. You can see that sitting in there nice and secure. Can't feel any of that Decorative there. That's good, I'm happy with that. I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to put a little bit of that adhesive under there and in there. Just a little bit, that's all I need. That's really well secured. A little bit on top. And I'm just going to put this little piece over there just to make sure nothing can be felt. I can just smear that little bit of glue. Doesn't dry and adhere straight away, that adhesive. It takes a little bit, doesn't take that long though. It's pretty good. This tape again there. Extra security. I like to know that when a customer gets one of my bags, I don't have to worry about hardware or anything falling out. That nice and smooth. Press it down. Just from the front. And that should be good. All adhered nicely, all secured. There we go. So those are done. So in the bags together. I'll sit there. Nicely centered. Can bring that over. Show you a look. So sitting nicely centered there. Looks so nice. Nice strong magnet too. For this next section, we'll do the straps. So I've got my strap connector piece, which will actually become 4 strap connectors, and then I've got my 2 straps as well. So we'll start with this one here. So I've already marked the line down the center. I've already applied my double-sided tape, so we can start putting this together. I just removed the tape off one side. I like to put a piece of tape on both sides so that I can line things up precisely and I'm not getting my fingers stuck to the double-sided tape as I'm working. So I'm getting this center piece, because this is going to be a double fold, I don't want to put it right on that line. Instead, I'm going to come just below that line. So you can see there's my center mark. Hopefully you can see that. I've used a white chalk there. It's my center mark and where I'm folding up to, so just shy of it. Now I like to start in the middle and then I'll come along using both fingers. Don't sort of stretch it or anything like that. Just sort of press from where it's in front of you, and then you reduce the risk of stretching your material. Bring that down. You can see when I get to the end, everything is lined up nice and even. It hasn't stretched out of place. If you stretch it, it can warp your straps, so you can get twisted straps. Just sort of guiding this along. Making sure that that is pressed in front. Just need to move a couple of things out of the road here so my strap can fit right along nicely there. And that end there then has lined up really nice. So now what I like to do, because you can see when you sort of first fold that, it's sort of a bit lumpy bumpy and that there. I just get this little tool from the hardware shop in Australia here. I just got this from Bunnings. You'll find it in the paint section, and it's used to sort of press down seams if you're wallpapering or things like that. So you'll find that in the paint section. Then I get a nail file and I just smooth off these edges so that they're not sharp or anything like that. And then I just use that as like a little brayer. And I can just press those down. You can use a brayer. I've got a Cricut brayer, so I could use that as well. Just having the rolling action doesn't stretch the material or warp it. And you can see now it sits much flatter and smoother. Gives you a nice finish there. Then just flip that around. Pull up your double-sided tape. Sometimes if they get a bit sticky, I was going to say just fold it back and crease it, but you can see as soon as I started to do that, it came up. Might need to, hopefully you can see. Probably could have changed my angle a bit just so I'm in view there, but we'll see how we go. Fold up these edges, again there, keeping away just this side of that line. So I've got a little bit of a gap. You leave the gap for what's called the turn of cloth. So the thicker a material is, I tend to leave a bigger gap, because you've got to allow, so however wide that is when you've folded it, that would be the width of the turn of cloth. So you allow that gap for that room there. You don't get all sort of buckling in the centre. Okay, there, just use my little rolly tool. Press that down, make it nice. So it's nice and flat. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get another piece of double-sided tape, and I will put it down the centre. You can use double-sided tape if you have troubles with it sticking to your needle and things like that. Just place it so that it's outside or inside of where your stitch line is, and then your needle won't hit it. So I've got that laid down there. Press it down so it's nicely adhered. Peel back the tape. And I can, as I'm folding, that should line up there quite nicely. If you've got some double-sided tape that doesn't like to adhere very well, you can see how easy that is to fold, and it's sitting really nice on that edge there, because I've kept the distance the same on both sides from that centre line. Makes it really easy. Turn it around for you. Like it just naturally just wants to fold, and where you've left that little gap. Go through, just give that another little press, sort of walking it through my fingers, and that's lovely. Perfectly lined up, nicely even. I can just run my finger along there, and I know that that's lined up pretty well. Again there, I'll just use my little rolly tool and I'll smooth down these straps. Usually I'd have it sort of going right across there. I don't have to worry about putting any marks on the straps, because I've filed down those edges so they're nice and smooth. There we go. It's one strap, and then I'll just repeat that and do that for the other strap. If your tape does have a tendency to not hold very well, you can just put a couple of little clips. You can use like your little wonder clips. I tend to sort of, if I use these, I like to put where those little, you see those little spikies there? Because if you're using like leather and things like that, they can actually leave a permanent mark on your leather. So I like to put it sort of roughly about where that stitching line would be. So that's if I use those. But my preference is to just use something like this if you need to. Depends how strong your double-sided tape is. Got some bigger ones as well. These are clips that I've had from when I used to do hairdressing many years ago, and you used to have all your own tools, so I used to put polish and things like that on the back of them. It's still on there, like blue. And used to put different colours that someone else might not have had. So I can just leave that there, or I can just go ahead and stitch it. But I thought I'll leave it there for now. Okay, that's all for now, and I will go through and I will
tape down the other ones and come back.
Okay, so I've got one strap here to show you that's completed. So top stitching down both sides, and on the ends I've done, when I've started, I've done one stitch forward and back just to lock those, because you will see these edges. I don't have any matte black metal hardware, so I will be finishing these edges here with edge paint, so to give them a nice finish. So show you how we've done that. So we've got our strap piece. So what I do, fold these edges to the center. I'll do this one from beginning through to end for you. Leaving that little gap like I did previously, making sure not to stretch anything as I'm going. Now we'll do the other side. Doing this one a bit more in real time for you. Get him a little rolly tool, press those edges down. Don't have to put a lot of pressure on it at all, just gets it nice and flat. Some double-sided tape down the center. You don't even have to do the double-sided tape, you can just hold it together, but it's fine. That just one less thing I have to worry about when I'm sewing. If your little edge doesn't want to come up, just fold that little crease over. Give that another little roll. Okay, so the edges are nice and smooth. So when I start, I'm just going to move these out of the road. So when I start, I'm going to put my needle down in the middle, do a bit of a locking stitch, and then I'll start, because I need these edges to be quite neat. I will get a little starter piece of fabric here. Just got a little piece of foam there. I'm just going to use that just so I can make sure those threads are nice and neat before I start. Saves me having to try and hold those threads. I can just hold on to that, lining up the edge of my presser foot against the edge of the fabric there, get that nice and close, needle down, and I'll do one stitch and one stitch back. I'm doing about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, 1/8 of an inch top stitch. When I get up towards the end here, slow down a little bit, finish near the edge, turn around. We'll see how close we get. I might need to do like a half of a stitch, a little bit too far away where I want my top stitching to be. Bring that needle up, and that looks pretty good. Just need to come up just a smidgen more to line that up. So I'm coming around and then I'll pull this back a little bit. That looks pretty good. Needle up, turn around, and I'm going to go one stitch over again, back and forward. My machine can cut the threads there. So now I'll grab my little snips, trim that back, leave a little bit of a tail because I'm going to melt that down. Not too big, just sort of a little bit of a, not sure if you can see that, a little bit of a spike. So I'll grab the lighter and I'll just hold that back so I can see those threads, and I'll just melt them down, locks them in. And when I'm doing this, I'm actually using the blue part of the flame. You tend to won't get, it's like the hottest, and it'll melt that thread quite nicely. I'll just see if you can see that. Very neat, nice neat finish. There's our second strap done. So the two shoulder straps are done for now, so we can just set those aside. Okay, the next things I want to do, while I know that I've got plenty of thread and that there, is all my top stitching components. So on the base of the bag, I want to add some decorative stitching here, which is inside on the base. And again there, for that one there, I've marked in 3/4 of an inch. My seam allowance is 3/8 of an inch. So my decorative stitching will be inside there. Just looks really good, and it also helps secure this deco bill in place, so it reduces the chance of it coming up. If you, okay, doesn't matter where I start doing this section, I'm just going to follow those lines. Try and stay fairly straight. Coming up to, so I'm coming down to this corner here. Lift my foot. I'm just going to go over one stitch, and I'll just trim that little thread. So I've just got that extra little layer of decorative stitching there. See if you can see it. Just going to trim these little threads here. Like I could if I wanted to leave long thread tails and pull it through, but it's on the bottom of the bag. Really don't think I need to worry that much on the bottom. Someone's studying my bottom that much. It might be a bit close, so that just locks that in there. See if you can see that. Just angle it around there. So it's nice and neat. Happy with that? They're done. Now what I want to do next as well is on my flap I want to add this little decorative panel. And what I've done here is because I'm not turning this edge over, sometimes I will, depends on the material that I'm using, but on this cork all I did is I got my lighter and I ran along to remove any little stray little threads that might be there. See another little one there. So I'll show you an example. I haven't done this side, this is going to be inside the seam allowance. If you just run your lighter along the bottom there, again there, holding it up against that blue edge, that'll seal any of those there. Then what you can do, which is what I did on this one, is I got some Fray Check, and then you just run the Fray Check, because that'll stop any little fuzzies that might appear. If there are any little pieces sticking out too, I'll tend to pull it, because if it is a thread I can pull that whole line out and then singe it with the lighter. But I just go along and I put a very thin, just a little coating on the edge there. Fray Check is just a sort of like a watered down adhesive. Run my finger along there and that'll stop any edges there from fraying and give it a nice neat finish. You can use any adhesive, but I find Fray Check, because it's quite watery and it doesn't add any bulk or anything there. If you've got an edge that you can sort of, it's like leaves a different colour there, what you can do is do your little bit of Fray Check there. You can put some edge coat down the side there, or on like a really thin piece like this. The other thing that you can do is you can use just a fabric marker like this one here, like even like a laundry marking pen if you're doing black, or a fabric marking pen, and you can just run the little edge like your pen just along those edge and just colour that in, and then you won't see that. So that's just another little tip. Now I want this to be lined up in the centre, and when I cut this cork I actually fussy cut it, because you have little sections of the cork where the little pieces are all adhered together. So I've got a piece running down through the centre, plus I also marked a notch. I'll get a marking pen so you can see where my notches are. Like, I know where they are, but just to make it a little bit easier for you to see. I've got a new pen, got to get it started. Here we go. There's a mark and another mark there. So that's my centre marks. I've got my panel here, and I also fussy cut this panel, so I actually have a line coming through the centre here as well. So if I wanted to make things easy for myself, I know that I've cut this straight and that edge there straight, I can line up that little line here to this centre mark, or if I didn't have the line, this is 3 inches wide, I can come through here and make a little mark at the 1.5 inch mark, like that. I could do the other side as well, make a little mark at that 1.5 inches. So you try to always sort of make marks and place guidelines and that to keep things as straight as possible. So for this one, I'm going to just lay this here. Why I'm not folding over the edges on this piece is I want to reduce as much bulk as I can. Have a look. Yeah, I think that's going to look pretty nice. So I'm going to just set that aside. I'm going to put some double-sided tape down the sides here just to hold this in place, keeping that inside there so that none of that tape's visible along that edge where I'm going to be stitching. You can bring it in, like if your machine doesn't like double-sided tape and you don't want to risk going over it, just take it in a little bit further. I'll just remove the backing off the tape. Line those edges up again there. Just got to line those little marks up. Those edges straight. Now, as I'm laying this down, I can be checking and make sure that's nice and centered. Come back up this end and I can do just a check. Looks pretty good to me. Would be just over a smidgen. If I had have just trimmed this off at the same edge there, I'd be able to make that a bit easier on myself. Okay, so that's in place. Might just trim that edge there while we're at it. Sorry about that, just had to pause the video. My hubby came up to ask me a question. So I've got that adhered down and I've just trimmed that edge off there, just made sure that that's lined up nice and straight. Now I'm going to do some top stitching going down the edge here, doing the same top stitching length. I don't think I told you what stitch length I was doing. I'm doing a stitch length of 4 on the cork. Just 1 stitch to lock that, it's only a top stitch. Using the edge of my foot as a guide. This is just to secure this in place. Now I'm just going to come straight across along here, close to this edge here. Get everything in place. I need to come over 1 more stitch there. Or about a half a stitch really. Let me just have a look. That's pretty good. And I'll top stitch down this edge. I like to take my time when I'm top stitching. And I'm just going to secure this edge down here as well. Just right along that edge. Then I know it's not going to move at all. Just cut those threads. So that's all nice in place there. Looks pretty good. Nice top stitching. Now what I want to do as well is I want to do another row of top stitching and then I'm going to do my rivets in between. So I might do, like you could do the width of that, whatever sort of you like. It's just an optional thing, you don't even have to put any on there. But what I might do is I might come in, just thinking how far I want to come in. I might come in 1/2 inch from that existing top stitching that I already did and I'll make a little chalk mark. Do I want to do a, yeah, I'll do a 1/2 inch, why not? Where's my little chalk pen? There it is. Got a little chalk pen here, so there's a little chalk wheel. I just need a fine line there, so I've got a guide to follow. And I'll do the same on this side. I'll come in 1/2 inch from that existing top stitching that I did. Just get that lined up nice and straight. and do a little mark. So I'm just going to start back up here and do that second row of top stitching. I can run along this edge here again. I'm inside the seam allowance. Oh, landed right on it. Perfect. I'll come in this way. Okay. There's our 2 rows. Just rub that chalk off. If your chalk doesn't want to come off, you can then get like what I usually do is get a little bit of a damp cloth at the end there, and I'll remove any chalk marks. Sometimes they need a little bit of moisture, so a little bit of a damp cloth usually helps. Now what I want to do as well now is I want to work out where I want to place my rivets. So I'm just going to measure. I've got 6 3/8 there, so if I bring that down there, 1/8, so 6 1/2, I might do, trying to think where I want to space these out. I'm just going to come down and put my 6 in the center there. I might do, thinking 1 2 3 4 5, actually I might do, just going to line that up in the center, although that's going to have 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, so around this end will only have about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Just going to do 1/4 inch there. Just go. So I've come in, that's my number 3 there, and I've gone over just 1/8 of an inch. Oh, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me, sorry about that. And I've got 1/4 inch there, so I think that's pretty even for me. Now I'm just going to get my marker, and I'm going to mark some little dots for where I want to put my rivet holes. So I know that between those stitches here is 1/2 inch, so I'm going to line up my ruler here with that 1/4 inch line just this side of that stitching line, just so I can just see that stitching line, and hopefully that will get me pretty close to the center. Okay, so I'm going to do a dot here on number 4. My little pin going. I put a heap of new ones in my little tray. 4 5 6 7 and 8. There's my little marks. So now I'll just line this ruler up the same place. I came up 1/8 of an inch. I'm just double checking. Yep, 1/8, coming in so that that 1/4 inch mark on my ruler is just this side of that stitching line. I'm on a 1/4 inch. There's the 1 and there's the 1/4 inch, and I'm 1/8 of an inch. So I should be even again, and I've just got to mark at those 1 inch marks. I love rivets, so they're nice and even now, and I can put the rivets in. So I shall get, I'll put the little lid back on the top of this pen. Move these out of the road. I don't need the ruler. I don't need the scissors at the moment. I don't need that. Try and clear my space as I'm going. Just making sure you can see what I'm doing. Hope my hands are out of the road for you. Now I've got a couple of little tools, different tools that I can use. This one's one of my favourites. So on these little edges here, it's pretty easy. I can come in and I can just lay that straight over the top and punch a hole like that in there, and I can do the same up the top. Now what I can do as well before I do that is, if I want to add some extra reinforcing or anything like that, depending on how thick my rivets are, I could lay a little strip right down, or I can just see how they go, and I can always pad them out if I need to. I'll show you how to do that. There's that one. That one. So far so good. I can probably squeeze down a little bit to that one, but instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this cork, roll this way, and I can just gently roll it back. So I can get that out of the road. It's well and truly out of the road there. Come in with my hole punch, keep that rolled up section out of the way, and I can continue hole punching. Always then to making sure, double check behind there that that's out of the road, because it has happened to me before where I've punched a hole in it. Here a bit more. Another one, and I can reach from this side. Now if your material happens to be quite thick, so there's my little holes, you can probably see the light shining through there. If your material is too thick for that, you can just use, like, there's a few different tools. This is one of the little tools that I've got, and it's a little screw punch. So it's got little cutting dies on there. I don't find as effective as that, but whatever it takes to do the job. So this one here, when you press down on it, it will twist and cut. So I'll line up that over the top and mark down, and it punches out a hole. It tries to. Sometimes you've just got to give it a little helping hand and just poke that through. But I find that I don't always get a neat cut. And what I have done before, I'll just get a little piece of scrap here. It's a little piece of Decovil. If I put that underneath where I'm going to punch the hole, so if I just come through here, sometimes I find having that little extra layer helps it go right through. Do this one, line it up over that mark, see if it worked. I don't think it did. That did. Be a little bit brutal with it. It's got it. Just got to give it a little bit of force. Let it know who's boss. And three. Yep. Oh, they're all done. Yep, they're all done. Okay, so that's that little tool. So it's just called a screw punch. Comes with a few little different sizes, and they just go in there. I just keep it in there so I don't risk losing any of the little punches. Now let's get out our rivets. So I just want the little ones. I ordered little short ones. Let's see how they look. I haven't used these before, these matte black ones. So we'll see. Oh, I think that's going to look pretty nice. Set these in, and then we can have a look. I'm just putting them all in, and then I'll turn it over and we can put the little caps on the back. Oh, I think that's looking good. Oh, first time using matte black hardware. Looks nice with the brown cork, because the brown cork, or the chocolate, it's like a chocolate cork, has got the black specks in it. The gunmetal does look nice with this as well. The rivets look like they're neatly centered. Don't get many rivets in this pack. So that's what, 10 rivets, and there's probably 10 left, so it's about a pack of 20. So you can see they're nicely lined up and spaced, nice and even. Look good down the center of that stitching. Put the little backies on. What I could do too, if I wanted to keep these matte black caps, which I might do, is I'll get some little silver rivets to put on the backs, because then I can use the other side of these would end up giving me, I can use and have more black rivets, because I can do the reverse. I'll just pop you on hold while I grab some silver rivets. Back again in my stash, I found these other black rivets that I've got, but I wasn't impressed with the colour of those, so I'm just going to put those on the backs. Now this is where I'm going to have a look to see if I have too much rivet. I probably could add a little bit there, a little bit of extra thickness. So what I'm going to add is, see if I've got some here. Got some more little pieces of the foams, nice. I only need small pieces. Cut this up. Acts like a little filler. Some more foam here. So what have I got there? 2, 4, 6, 8. More than enough. Actually, I've got a couple there that were already punched. I'll just get my hole punch, and I can just do a few of these together at a time. Little birdies are chirping outside my window. They're done. Get a few more, stack them up. They're done. And another one. Even just some little scrap pieces of some extra cork you might have does the job as well. You can just pop them on. There's no strain or anything on these rivets. They're decorative, so they don't have to be like super reinforced or anything like that. This is just like a little filler. The foam will squish down. If they're a bit big, you can trim them down. But honestly, you won't see these. And it'll look pretty good. Okay, now I'll go and put my little caps on. Push that one on. You'll generally feel them click in. And they're on. Now I'll get my rivet press and I'll just press them into place. Oh, that looks so nice. That looks so good. Got a rivet press here. Now, sometimes you've got to be careful that they don't get scratched too. I'm not sure what these black ones will be like. I might put them down, face down. I usually like to stand up when I'm putting my rivets in. Oh, they look nice. They do look good. There's that. Do this side. Like what I'm doing here, you don't need to do like the decorative panel, but I do think it just adds a nice touch. Looks so nice. So there they all are. They're all set in there. Looks really nice. Like that matte black. Okay, get rid of that for now. Get rid of that, get rid of that. Get rid of that. Clear off the space so we've got a blank slate once again. That away. Okay, so that's done. The base is done. I don't like to put my feet in until I have stitched this in, but I can actually punch the holes out for the feet while I'm here. No, I won't, because the feet, let me just check the sort of feet they are. That's the rivets. There's my little footsies. Here they are. Depends what type of foot. Yeah, so I just want a hole. So I'll do a hole punch while I'm at it. Then that's done. Into the center for that one. This one. And that one. Now when I mark those feet placements, I do the markings and then I do the holes on the inside of those markings, and this one I try to get in the center. I probably have got room to stitch that around these feet. Let's have a look. We'll see. Let's have a little squizzy. Have a little squiz. That one. Let's just see. Oh, they look nice. Yeah, I think we'll want to add a bit of padding in that gap. Yeah, because it's going to have just a slight bit of gap there. They're going to look nice. That's the feet. So my stitching is going to go here. Yeah, I've got plenty of room. But I won't do it yet. I'll wait until I stitch that seam there. And then we can put that together. Okay. Flap's done. That's done. That's the exterior front panel. And then I've got my exterior back panel. So So what happens to happen with these is these get stitched together. That's going to look nice, nice contrast. Just deciding whether I want to put my flap on now or wait. Generally usually I've been putting it on after, but I'm not sure. I might wait. Just having a look. I might even trim these edges of this flap in a little bit further yet. We'll see. So I need to make sure that it's within that seam allowance. I'm just going to check. 1 second, I'll be back. Okay, for this next step, what we're going to do is I'm going to work on the strap brackets next. I've double checked where I'm up to here. I sort of don't follow the pattern, but I sort of just wanted to double check what I think I'll do next. So with these, I'm going to remove that piece of double-sided tape, and I'm going to fold this to the center. Even though I won't be folding this in half again, I am going to leave just a slight little gap there, just to make sure that it sort of lines up pretty close to my straps. I can double check it again. You go over on the line a little bit on these straps, it's not a big deal, so long as there's just leave a little bit of a gap, because again there you still need to allow for that turn of cloth that we were talking about before, making sure that you don't stretch anything as you're going. Edges should still line up nice and neat. So that's that side there. If you find you've got having hassles there, just put that along that edge, or use those clips like I was mentioning before. I just don't want them getting in the road. I find just the narrower double-sided tape sometimes tends to lift because there's not as much holding the material down. We'll do this side. I could have used a wider piece of double-sided tape. The gap, just a slight bit of a gap there. Bring those two clips over there now, hold them in place, come down this end, see, so this one's not holding as well. Once I probably put a bit of pressure on there with my little rolly tool, it might help. Depends on the tape too. This one's not a very strong tape. Oop. I've got my little ones here. I'll just put one on. It's not going to be on there long, and the cork will come back. It'll spring back. I've got more clips here. Let's grab my dish. Heaps of clips. No shortage of clips. Okay, they're done. So what I need to do now is I'm going to be trimming these back so that they are 5 3/8 of an inch long. I could just do 5.5. I think that will be fine. Just going to take those ends there off, get my little rolly, give them a bit of a roll. Gets that memory crease into the cork, and it should help it stay down. So 5, and I'm going to do 5.5 because when I do the fold over it'll probably be a little bit shorter, so I might even go 5 3/4. No, we'll just do 5.5. We'll see how we go. Just line up. I like to make sure that when I cut I get a nice straight cut. I hope these ones might be sharper. A sharp cut. So there's one strap connector. And it'll get folded over like that. They're cute. They are cute. Now actually I could do too, if depending on your material, you can add in like a reinforcement. I'm just seeing how, just want to get these straps, depends on the types of connectors that I'm using as well, whether I'll reinforce that section where it's going to fold over. Yeah, no, that's not going to cut in, like it's got a nice round smooth edge. That should be pretty good. That's going to be very nice. Now I want to do another marking of where I'm going to fold this down to, and this will get folded down to 2.5. I just want to double check. 2.5. I'm going to make a little mark. This is on the wrong side. Make a little mark. Fold that back down to there. That will be the little strap connector on the front of the bag. That looks pretty good. So, yep, happy with that. Again there, I cut that at 5.5, and I'll go and do these as well now. Cut the rest of them. Five and a half, make sure it's straight. There's another one. Cut these all, and then I'll do our markings. That, make sure that stays in there. Good. 5.5. And one more. I've got extra here. 5.5 again. One more time. Done. They're done. Get rid of these little clips. Put that away. Take that away. Done with them for now. 4 rings. And I want to mark 2.5 inches down. One. Make sure sure that little line is straight as well. Done that one. And 3. Now I'm going to get some more double-sided tape. I'll use my bit wider one this time. And I'll snip it. So I'm going to put it so that it is inside. It needs a little trim. Seam allowance, so I don't want it seen on the outside. Just there. Can put a longer piece up the centre. Put the ring on, and if you have joins in hardware, put that inside. Take that bit of tape off. Fold that down to meet that line, and that's pretty good. Now if you're not sure if your tape's going to move, just put a little clip there. See there, that's staying pretty good now. So this one here, I can do that. Bit of tape, I can just put it even just up this end. I just don't want it to sit where the hardware is going to go, because it won't let it slide freely then when it wants to move around. It'll get stuck on the tape. Slide that over before I take the tape off. Bring that up. Line that up. Making sure that that's centered. And squeeze that together. And we'll put that little clip on there again. They look really nice, I like those. Bit of tape again. I could even do my tape going down further down this way, because I am going to be adhering that down. I'll just go there. Do whatever works. This tape, I reckon, tends to come off better when it's cut. It likes a nice neat edge. If you find your little corners seem to be sticking out a little bit, what you can do is just undo this, pull that apart a bit, and just bring them in a little bit so that they come in narrower. Then they'll sit inside, be nice and neat. Done. That's cute. Make sure they're all the same. They should look pretty right. Yep. Make sure I've folded them all at the right ends. Hardware, join in the middle. Yeah, I think those ones are the ones that came apart a little bit on me. Just pull it apart, bring it in. Line it up on that bit of chalk. It's done. Look nice. Okay, now we need to get our front panel. Put that away again. Leave my ruler out because I'm going to need that. Now we need to do a little bit more measuring. because we need to work out like our placement for our straps and that there. Okay. Just going to check what they were, and it's more important on this bag especially to place these in the right places so that they line up with the flap. Yep. It's got 1 1/4 inches. Now I'm doing those seam allowances. Now that should be right. So 1 1/4 inches in, and we've got to make sure that it's straight. So to do that, I'm going to line up this edge along this bottom here, and then how wide is that? 13. So if I go back to 11 3/4 up that end, then I can place a mark right there. It's going to grab, make it my chalk. So that's the mark there. Got this white pencil here. This is just a sew line pen there. If I do a faint little chalk mark along there, we know then that that is straight. It gives me a straight corner, straight little guideline. So I'm going to do the same on this side. 7 3/4, get that straight there, and I'm going to draw a line. So I've got straight lines here to follow for the placement of my strap. Just going to get this one here. So that makes that a nice easy placement there. They are quite wide apart, these straps, but they need to go there to make sure that it fits in with the flap when you put the flap on. So to secure those in place, we'll get our trusty double-sided tape out again, and we'll tape it down in place. Just down the centre there. Again there, if your machine doesn't like double-sided tape, you can just keep this out of your stitching. You could bring it back a little bit further on this side. And we've got a nice straight little guide there. Okay. That's down. Put this one down. Down the middle. Line it up on that line, we know it's straight. There we go. And we'll do the same for the back while we're at it. I did 11 3/4, which gives me my 1 1/4. Get that straight. Straight edge down there, and then I've got a straight edge on this side. chalk, and on this side again. Which side do I want to use? I'll go this way. Get my rulers the same because I know my guide now that I'm doing on this side was 11 3/4. Got my hardware there, it's making it a little bit slippery. I did that side, didn't I? 11 3/4. Just going to go this way. It's funny how you find a little guide and you just want to use that guide. It's like, give me that guide. I had it worked out. It's slippery. There we go. 1/4. Yep, love it. Double-sided tape. Down the middle. Line up the bottom, line it up straight, and done. Same for this side. Just going to trim that edge there. So now all we need to do, double check first. I'll get stitched down there, make sure these are looking pretty nice. So check to see that none of these little edges are coming out. That one could go in a little bit further, I reckon. Is there a little gap? Just checking. You can use your awl or something to make sure that that sits in nicely when you're sewing along as well, stitching that down. So I'm going to take my stitching to around about here, and then I'm going to have a rivet sitting above to hold that in place. I've got Decaville on the back, but I might add another bit of reinforcing as well. I don't like to stitch in too close because you don't want to weaken that cork there, so you're better off not having stitching up too close because it can sort of like leave a perforation there, and then you've got more chance of that tearing. Just going to do little guidelines of where I want to stitch up to. I'll get my wider ruler. Let's see if that, yeah, because I want them to be the same wherever I stitch to, the same on both sides. So here I'm measuring, that's 3.5. 3.5 and 3/4. Just want to see if I do 3/4 of an inch from that fold. I'm just going to make a little mark and see where that takes that point to, because that leaves plenty of room to turn with your presser foot and enough room there for a rivet. that would make that 3 3/8. 3 3/8 sounds good to me. Just lining up the 3 3, like on a 3/8 mark there, which makes that 1 2 3, 1 2 3, 3 3/8. So that's where we're going to stitch to. We're going to stitch to, and I'm going to do the same on the other side. 3 3/8, 3 3/8. This is where you're cutting and making sure when you're cutting that you're doing accurate cutting, because you're using your cut edges as guides as well. So if your cut edges crooked, your guides will be off as well. Let's have a look. Something doesn't look right there. So even just when I look at that, I can see that's not right. What did I do wrong? 3 3/8. It moved. Yep, I would have went up too high. So also use your eyes. So I'll rub that one out. 3 3/8. Double check. What do they say? Measure twice, cut once. Have a look at those. They look pretty good. 3 3/8. Your straps are a real visual part of your bag, and having a flap and everything there and making them contrast, anything that's not quite right, I think stands out even more. So let's stitch these on. Now I'm going to get that little scrap there, little scrap starter, just to make sure that those threads, nothing gets tangled up. Looks good there. Pull them out. All nice and straight, and I'm going to do that like about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Still on that stitch length of 4, one locking stitch. Looks pretty good. It's just under that line, just under. And this is where I need to check to make sure I get that right spot there. Ooh, is it? Just got it sitting there. I think it looks pretty good. And my little foot there is still touching, so I'm going to get something to put underneath there to reduce the risk of marking my cork as the foot comes down. It's just touching on that hardware, on the cork there from the hardware. Now I can also as well, because so that foot there you can see is sticking up in the air, you can put a little hump jumper in, just keeping that straight there, and just give that a little bit of a helping hand. Just do one stitch. But I don't want to got to make sure that my stitching doesn't go crooked. I think I've cleared that there, but I just like to make sure. Now when I get down to the bottom, I'm just going to turn inside the seam allowance there and lock that in place. That looks pretty good. And that's the stitching there. Just move it around so you can see. And we'll remove those chalk marks after. Now we're going to do the same again. I'm just going to start here. I know that that's in pretty good. Turn this around. Come up. Any of those little edges, just want to make sure that they sit in. everything looks good. Yeah, good. One stitch at a time. Yeah. Get rid of that. Now I want that little piece of backing there, just to make sure. And that looks good too. That one's done. Now we'll do the other side. That's the back done, and we'll do the front. We'll start in the middle down here. Secure those stitches. Even though they're a top stitching, you still don't want those threads working their way loose into the bag at all, and escaping into the seams. That tucked in there. Probably could have come over about a half a stitch there. I'm just gonna hand crank, come over, let it come down a bit, and then I'm just gonna slide it back. Like, it's being very pedantic now, but hey, why not? I think that's going to be good. Yeah, I reckon. Take that foot all the way down, bring it up. Here's hoping. You've got that little bit that could possibly stick out, just bring that in and just give that a little guide. Give him a little squeeze, gentle little guide. Get him back into place where he should be. Looks pretty good. Not too bad. Not too bad. Okay, start here. Come across. Remember, coming down to this lower one, that was where I had put the first mark that wasn't quite right. Bringing that little edge in, just giving that just a gentle little guide. And he slipped back out just a fraction, like a fraction of a millimetre. Can I see it? Oh, just. He looks pretty good though. Trim any loose little threads out of there, and we'll come back after when we remove all our markings. Looks good. Okay, so what are our straps going to look? Let's have a little sneaky peek. Oh yeah, it's looking nice. And it'll go like that. What we'll do is we'll actually, I might do a stitch across to secure them, and as well as a rivet. So because we've got a top stitching here, so I might do a top stitching across there to secure, plus then add a rivet. I think that'll look nice. So you can have a bit of creative freedom as you're going along. Don't be afraid to change things around. Okay, so it's done. Oh, I love that. Love this hardware. Okay, we'll pause the video there and then we'll be back again.
Okay, and we're back again. So I've decided on the next step is I'm going to attach the flap. So I'm out of order of what the pattern is, but I'd like to try adding the flap on before I do the rest. I think I could be wrong because I still have to do side panels as well. That could get in the way. I'll sew the flap and then we'll attach it later. Now I measured up as well with that flap piece because I'd mentioned before that I brought that in a 1/4 inch. So what I did then, because I've adjusted the seam allowances on this panel and I brought these sides in a 1/4 inch, I decided that when I've checked the measurements here, if I stitch to here, the flap will be too wide for that seam allowance, so I've brought that in another 1/8 of an inch so that I know then that it should butt up and be able to sit inside in those seam allowances when we attach that flap. So let's sew the flap together so it's ready for when we go to attach it. So right sides together. Now to make this, because cork can be quite slippery on top of cork, what I'm going to do is attach a little bit of double-sided tape. So I'll just use a narrow double-sided tape. So for this one I'm going to use this basting tape that I've got here. It's like a wash away sort of one here and it's just an 1/8 of an inch. I'm just going to put just a little bit around. Don't need to fully have it all done. A little bit on that edge there and then I'll put a little bit on this edge. Just stops it from slipping and sliding. Especially as we've got like some curves here that we're going to be going around. Just a couple of places there. Because we can't use pins and things like that, I like to use the tape. I can use clips, but I do find that things can still shift and move, whereas I like to know things aren't going to move. Hold that in place. A little bit there. Especially for this flap, it's like one of the important components of the bag. It's not very strong tape, this one, but it should hold enough for us. Sometimes it can take you just as long to get the tape off. One doesn't want to stick. Some things too you'll find with cork, like some adhesives don't work that well on cork. It's because it's completely different to leather. That one doesn't want to stick. Might get my other tape out. Yeah, that one doesn't want to. I had it out there and I thought, oh, I'll use that one. Some of these probably might, but yeah. When all else fails, get the stronger one. Those stuck down. Put another one here, it's a stronger tape. appears better. Still lifts a little bit there on that cork. Just put a couple of little tiny pieces in here. Okay. Now, I want to get this lined up so it's lined up nice. Line up these edges at the top here. Line up that edge. I didn't put tape at the top there. Give me a little bit of movement there. Them edges. Come around and just check. Looks pretty good. Give that a bit of a press around. Okay. So I'm going to do couple of little locking stitches to start. Now going on that new line that I made. Now I'm going to reduce my stitch length now down to a 3 because these are a bit more structural seams, they're not like top stitching seams. This is easy sewing now because I don't have to worry about following that edge. I can just follow that line. A little bit of pivoting. So I'm just using this hand here to help steer it. Just take a stitch at a time when you get to those little curves. There we go. So there's our stitching done. Not too bad. It's like colouring in the lines. So I will do a little bit of snipping on these curves particularly, just because they've got to come into the inside there. A few little notches. Get some little sharp scissors. I might just bring this little corner in. Might just trim that little seam allowance all the way around, and then I'll still do some snips. Just take it down a little bit. Coming in a bit closer on the curves. And then tapering back out. I will still do a few little snips here, just staying inside those seam allowances though. Just tiny little snips. gives it a little bit of give. Okay, I'll turn it right side out and have a look. Oh, that looks so good. Now once I turn this right side out, I'll work all these little curves out. I don't want to poke anything too much yet, I just want to sort of get it out and then we'll smooth them out. Looking nice. Now I'm going to get one of my little tools that I like to use. This one here. Now I'm going to put this, and you can use like a point turning tool or something like that if you've got a favourite tool. Nothing too sharp though. That's probably why I like this one to start with. So I'm coming in and I'm going to work in on the seam allowance on the outside first. So I want it sitting over. So I'm going to push sort of from that side. Again there, I'm on this side of the seam allowance. And just a little gentle little nudge in there. Not poking too hard. Just sort of, just going gentle. You don't want to stretch anything. Use my fingers there just to push these curves out a bit more. And there on the darker side, on the outside, I've got my little tool running along, smoothing those out. Around this side, smooth those. Okay, starting to look like a nice little flap. So now what I'll do is I'll just use my fingers and I'll just sort of manipulate those. See if I can get them nice and smooth. And as I'm going, I'm just sort of rolling and giving a little bit of pressure there, just sort of squeezing them together. I feel a little bit of bulkiness just there. A little bit of bulk just there. I'm just gonna see if I can smooth that down a little bit. That feels better. Let's have a look, see what we got. On this edge. So not quite happy yet with that curve. I might just grab, I've got this little tool here, it's like a little scoring wheel, like a little scoring tool that you can use for paper craft and that. It's got a nice little rounded edge, a little bit smaller. Again there, I'm on the outside part of the seam allowance, and I'm just sort of giving that a little push, and I'll get to that curve again there. Just a little bit of rounding. And let's go back and have a look. they're sitting nicer now. A bit more rounded. Pretty good. Okay. We'll do a bit of top stitching. Now, as I'm going around, I sort of want to make sure that not too much of this colour comes through onto the top. Doing about 1/8 of an inch top stitch, and I'll go back to a stitch length of 4. Just lock those stitches down. I'm just pivoting as I'm going around. Just move those out of the road there. That's the bulk there from that flap. Just making sure that brown doesn't sneak out underneath too much. Like, you're going to see the brown, but I just don't want too much of it poking through. Before I close up this end, I just want to make sure I'm happy with that. Oh, it looks pretty good. So that's that side. Let's have a look at this side. And there's that side. Love that black. So yeah, pretty good. Pretty happy with that. Now I will base this down so it stays closed. And there's my flap, all done, ready to put on the bag. Oh, so like that. Let's have a little peeky, will we? Let's have a little look-see. Oh yeah, she's starting to take shape. So they'll sit in there like that. Looking good, looking good. Line it up. Very nice. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll put the bottom on. So with these here, we're going to do right sides together. On these, I've got my centres marked. I can just line those up there. This is where if you wanted to, like you can, just makes it easier. Pop a couple of clips in, line those edges up. Line this one up. Okay. Now I want to do a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance on here. Oh, went a bit haywire there, so I'll come back and I'll fix that one up. Just want to keep the seam pretty straight. I see it there, just a little bit of a curve there, so I'll go back and I'll straighten that up. What I'll do too sometimes, if I'm coming back in, I just come back further and then I just work my way back up to that seam and then keep going and then work my way back out again. That will give me a nice straight seam. Oh, looks good. Now we're going to press the seam allowance towards the bottom, so just with that bottom, fold it down like that, and then we're going to do a row of top stitching along here. Give that a nice little press, sort of preset that crease in there, and we'll do some top stitching. Come this way, I think. Which way will I go? I like this way. I like seeing the edge of my foot along here. So now on the bottom of that bag, it'll have that look. So it'll be like 2 rows of stitching along there. So I think that'll look pretty nice. Now we'll do the other side. Attach that. So again there, I'm doing a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. That's that one there where I had that foot that I thought, oh, I'll see if I can do it with the foot on. You can, but it is easier. I'm glad I didn't put all the feet on. I could just taken that one out, but I had to wriggle past. Okay, that one's nice and straight there. I want to make sure that that seam allowance is going to the bottom, and then we'll do the top stitching on this one. Got stuck on my little handle there, so that's done. That looks pretty good. It's done. So now what we want to do is attach our side panels. So I'll grab those. Now we've got our side panels, and this is a pretty sharp little curve. So what I like to do is I've got my centres marked. I can line those up. I can do a little bit of basting, so to base that into place. I'll decide which side's probably easier to see. I might just mark that centre
with a lighter pen. There's my centre. If I line those up, them exactly in place. Got a couple of clips. There's one and there's one. Now when I look at that, I can see I've got a bit of a straight edge here, so that's the edge where I'm going to base this into place. Just going to baste it about 1/8 of an inch away, just to hold it and secure it down in place. Okay. I'll hold that temporarily. Now the next step that I'm going to do is I will actually make some little snips before I start sewing around this curve. This here was one of my notches, so I'll just get my other pen and I'll mark it, because that's actually a notch. And there's a notch there. We might use those notches to help us line up. I'm doing probably not quite a 1/4 inch size notches, and I've made them quite small because I'm going around quite a sort of sharp bit of a curve there. Now I'll come back up to this section here. I want to make sure they line up. Just put a clip there. I've got little notches here. Use those as guides. Clip there. Now when I come to this section, there's the notch, there's the notch, line those up, put a clip, and then we can wriggle that into place. Come around this side, gonna line up the top edges there. So I do the tops and the center bottom first before I do anything else. Come down, got a little notch there and there. You can see that's fairly straight sort of there, that's sitting in quite well. Then I've just got to get these little corners to sit in and slide when I come around here, and they might not stay in place. Another little tool that I love is my little staple gun. Staples right near the edges, so I can come in here, I've got them lined up, and I can just put a staple right near that edge there. They're easy to get out. I can just use my little staple remover. Same here with this corner if I wanted to, because these move. If you've used clips before, they move. Okay. Just inside that seam allowance, I'll place a little staple. I'll even do another one there. Then I don't have to worry about clips. I know people love their clips. I love my little staples. Okay, that should do us. Just a few staples there to pick out. So you can see quite a deep, sharp sort of curve. Keep those edges lined up the top there. Pinch them down together. And 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Got those stitches, and I'll reduce that stitch length back to a 3. I tell you, this will be pretty smooth sailing. So you can see how slippery that is. It's even just there, and I'm still on a sort of straight curve, but because you've got all this bulk here, and it just naturally just wants to push it. You can use your sewing awl as well to hold that, or anything there that you've got that's got like a bit of a point if you haven't got your awl handy. See, if that wasn't attached, you can see that this section here already wants to push. So I just get it, push that down, hold that in, and stitch away. Just squish this down, keeping that 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, coming up to the curve. I'm just working it down sort of flat. If I had clips there, I wouldn't have been able to do that. Coming around that curve. I'm just walking it around on the straight. Coming up to my next curve. Get that ready to come around. Walk it in. Just stitch by stitch. My main aim at the moment is to keep this sort of fairly flat and to be able to keep a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Make sure I don't get any puckers. That's looking pretty good. Oh, we might have got a little crease there. I thought it might have pushed out, but we'll check it. If it does have a crease, that's good, because then I can show you how you fix that if you have. Coming up to the top. Now I have, see, this is slipped. I thought it was staying in place, but those clips on cork don't hold things very securely. Not too bad. We can adjust for that. That's where it's very handy to have more than a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Let's have a look. We'll see if we've got a little pucker there or not. Could have, but it'll depend what it looks like on the outside when we turn it through. Not too bad, considering that's a pretty tight curve. Let's turn this bit inside out and we'll have a look. Oh, take my foot off the pedal. Now, just running my fingers through just to see how that looks. Squeeze that, squeezing around, and I haven't trimmed that seam allowance or anything there. Squeeze there. Let's see how that's looking. That looks pretty good. Now this is where I like this tool, and I'll use the bigger end. It's got that little ball on there, and I will just, I'm coming in from the front of the bag. So I'm on this side of that seam allowance and just sort of running my fingers along there. Just get that nice and smooth, staying on that outside of that lining there, running along, and just give that a little gentle little push around there. And I think it's looking pretty good. That looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. So when the flap goes on, so that can fold in there nice. If I made this too stiff, it makes that harder to fold in, so I think that'll curve in there nicely. Okay, push that back out again. and we'll do the other side. It's like a rinse and repeat. So I'll trim these up, reduce a little bit of that bulk there when we're finished, but we've got to do this side first. But yeah, it is a pretty sharp little bit of a curve. So we'll line those up. Centres. There's a centre and a centre. I might even do a little staple there. Quite like my little stapler. She holds things really nice. That one and that one. And then we'll come up, do this top edge, get those raw edges nice and even. This here also has like a curve sort of out as well. Whoop. Line up those notches. Come down here. There's that other notch down here. Let's line that up. Get that curve in there nice. Line them. So there we go. Now, I haven't even added any little notches there. The stapler, as you can see, is making my life pretty easy. Pretty good. Like that. We'll put a little staple up this top edge. No chance of slipping then. Those notches lined up. Come down here. Work this little corner in. That's pretty good. Okay, that's in. Let's stitch this baby up. Three-eighths of an inch seam allowance. See, that's pretty smooth sailing so far. Coming up around these sharp little curves. Bring this around. The main focus here is to keep that 3/8 of an inch seam allowance and avoid puckers. I don't have to worry so much about keeping the raw edges together because they're staying nice. I've got no bulky clips in my way annoying me. So one less thing to worry about. You can also use double-sided tape along here as well. Come in a little bit there on that seam allowance. I'll check it when we're done because I can always come and add a bit more. Sure that's going good. These edges now, they've stayed together. Let's have a look. Not too bad. Not too bad. That's that little spot there where I said, oh, went a little bit out. Yeah. So push that. They just come out easy. So that's where I mucked up there. That's what threw me. I was going to do that. It's like 2 stitches or something. So I'm coming in. And then I'll veer out. Okay. Check that from the inside. You feel like you can see there's no puckers or anything there. Tickle in my throat. I think I need a drink. I've got a little staple remover here. So this is how quick and easy it is to remove these staples. Just like that. Like no hassle at all. Any staple remover will do it. On the wrong side here. Hand it over to the right side of the staple. So that's my way of getting around tricky, sharp little corners. Make sure there's no staples left. And then I'll just take these couple out. We can trim that seam allowance. The side with the other side that I had more of the staples in, that was a much easier sew than this side here. Oh, there went me a little staple. That's it. They're all out. So as you can see, pretty quick and easy to get those out. Now we'll do some trimming. Don't have to do a lot of trimming here. I'm not trimming up here. I'm just coming in a little bit down here. Trim some of that off. Don't want to trim too close to your stitches there. Just a little bit out. This just sort of softens the edges too, so you don't have this sort of harsh line. I think I need a new pair of pinking scissors. Just taper that in a little bit. There we go. I don't worry about trimming these threads too short. They're on the inside, and better to have a little extra thread on those so they've got less chance of coming apart. That's all we need to do. Should we turn it out? I think we should turn it out and have a little look-see. I think we should. So I'll trim this thread. These ones I do like to trim. They don't have to come back too short, but I just like to trim them enough so that they won't come through on the seam allowance. Push this through. to look like a handbag. I'll go through as well with that little curve tool and get them all nice. Isn't that right? I was just using my finger to sort of roll through there then. Fingernails come in handy. Okay, so there's our front and there's our back.